We think of the temple as a place of worship, a sacred space, a house of prayer, a dwelling place for the divine. And it was. But the temple was also something else, something the English translations often hide from us. In Hebrew, the temple is called the Bayit, Bayit. And Bayit does not just mean house. It means household. It means family. It means dynasty. When David wanted to build a house for God, God responded by promising to build David a house, an eternal dynasty, 2 Samuel 7. The temple was not just a building. It was the physical manifestation of the king's covenant with God. It was the center of political power, economic control, and ideological legitimacy. The temple had three main functions: religious, as a means for obtaining forgiveness; political, as a visible symbol of the king's grandeur; and ideological, as the locus for the triad of God, king, and city. And the struggle over who controlled it, kings, priests, or prophets, shaped the entire Old Testament story. Stick with me, because once you understand the politics of the temple, you will never read the Old Testament the same way again. Let's start with the word. Bayit, Bayit, house. It appears over 2,000 times in the Hebrew Bible. But here is what most people miss. Bayit is a word that blurs the line between building and bloodline. When the Bible speaks of the house of David, it is not talking about a building. It is talking about a royal dynasty, a family line that would rule forever. But here is what most people miss, and that is precisely why the temple was built. When King David wanted to build a house for God, God responded by promising to build David a house, an eternal dynasty, 2 Samuel 7. The temple, therefore, was not just a place of worship. It was the physical manifestation of the king's covenant with God. It was built by the king for God and established Jerusalem as the inseparable center of both religious and royal power. And here is the political masterstroke. By building the temple, Solomon was not just honoring God, he was solidifying his own rule. The temple was a declaration: I am God's chosen king. God dwells in my city. My dynasty is eternal. The temple was the king's private chapel, an elitist institution that centralized power in Jerusalem and legitimized the monarchy. Now, let's look at who controlled the temple. During the First Temple period, the king wasn't just a political leader. He was the most important ritual figure in the nation. When Solomon dedicated the temple, he did not stand aside and let the priests speak. He himself offered the prayers, blessed the people, and dedicated the sanctuary. Then Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in the presence of all the assembly of Israel and spread out his hands toward heaven. O Lord, God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth beneath. 1 Kings 8:22-23. Now, here is what most people miss. Solomon was acting as king, priest, and prophet all in one. The priest performed the ministerial functions of ritual and sacrifice, but the king was the supreme authority over the temple. And this political reality explains one of the great schisms in the Bible. When the kingdom split, Jeroboam, the new king of Israel, knew he had to create his own religious centers. He built temples at Dan and Bethel with golden calves. Why? Because the temple in Jerusalem was, first and foremost, the king's temple. If his people went to Jerusalem to worship, they would be submitting to the Davidic king. Jeroboam was not just committing idolatry. He was making a political power move. The destruction of the First Temple in 586 BCE created a massive power vacuum. With no king, who would lead? The answer was the priests, particularly the high priest. The term Kohen Gadol, high priest, is first used in reference to Aaron and his descendants. During the Babylonian and Persian periods, the high priest was the leader of the Jewish community, answerable to the imperial powers. But by the Hellenistic period, the high priesthood became a fiercely contested political prize. The Maccabean revolt, sparked by Antiochus IV, Epiphanes' desecration of the temple, led to the rise of the Hasmonean family. They combined the offices of high priest and king in one person. For the first time, the religious and political leadership were united in one individual. The Hasmoneans were seen as usurpers, a priestly family that had seized the throne. And then there were the prophets. Do not trust in deceptive words chanting, "This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord." Jeremiah 7:4. Jeremiah stood in the temple gates and challenged the people's faith in the building itself. He warned them that the temple's presence did not guarantee their safety, regardless of their moral conduct. He was attacking the very foundation of temple politics. The idea that the temple was a magic shield protecting the nation. The priests and prophets felt personally attacked. But Jeremiah was not alone. The prophet Amos declared, I despise your festivals, but let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Amos 5:21-24. Amos was condemning the temple cult when it was divorced from ethical living. He dismantled the notion that performing rites, sacrifices, and pilgrim feasts could automatically secure divine favor. And then there was the most dramatic example of all. The prophet Zechariah, son of the high priest Jehoiada, was stoned to death in the temple courtyard for speaking out against the king's injustice, 2 Chronicles 24:20-22. His blood, according to tradition, stained the temple for centuries. A deep Hebrew word study reveals the theological tension at the heart of this political struggle. The portable sanctuary in the wilderness was called the Mishkan, meaning dwelling place. It was a tent, a place of divine presence that moved with God's people. The root of Mishkan is shashan, to dwell or to rest. In contrast, Solomon's temple was a Bayit, a permanent house. The shift from a mobile dwelling to a fixed institution mirrors the shift from a tribal confederation to a centralized monarchy. God's presence, which had been a pilgrimage, was now a permanent fixture of the state. The prophets saw this as a danger. The Bayit had become a cage for God, and the people believed they could control the divine through ritual and politics. They longed for a return to the spirit of the Mishkan, where God was free to move and speak. Oh, two kings attempted to reform the temple and centralize worship. King Hezekiah eliminated rural altars and centralized all worship in the Temple of Jerusalem. He sought to bring about unity among the people by centralizing the cult. King Josiah went even further. During his reign, the Book of the Law, widely believed to be Deuteronomy, was discovered in the temple. Josiah's reforms systematically destroyed cult places and consolidated religious authority in the hands of the Jerusalem temple priests. The reforms were political as well as religious. Hezekiah's centralization of worship was tied to his rebellion against Assyrian dominance. And Deuteronomy, the book that inspired Josiah's reforms, was designed to justify Davidic rule and enhance the religious, economic, and political power of the centralized state. The temple was always political. Now, let's bring this all together. The temple was never just a place of worship. It was the political, economic, and ideological heart of the nation. And the struggle over who controlled it, kings, priests, or prophets, shaped the entire Old Testament story. Here is the question this story forces you to ask. What are you placing your trust in? The people of Jeremiah's day trusted in the temple. They chanted, "This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord," and they were destroyed. They trusted in a building, a political institution, rather than in the God who dwelt there. And that is the lesson of temple politics. The house of God is not a building. It is a people who dwell in His presence.